What happened to classic rock? What caused this genre of music to die out so suddenly? Here I'm going to talk about some key developments that can answer this question. Let's get started. People would argue that the Beatles were the beginning of classic rock, and this is pretty accurate. Rock band historian Mark Mouzon goes on to describe how John Lennon met Paul McCartney and how they created one of the best bands in history, the Beatles. As time goes on, the classic rock genre seemed to get more broad, with bands like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple bringing their classic guitar solos into most of their songs. This is similar to how Chuck Berry began his own genre of music in the 50s. Berry, known for his legendary piece, Johnny B. Goode, sparked a whole new era of music that no one had ever heard before, rock and roll. Writer John Perales wrote in his article, Mr. Berry was rock and roll's master and conceptual genius. Both Chuck Berry and the Beatles created their own era of music, which is why they're both known as legends. Senior editor Walt Hickey states how classic rock is not just restricted in an era of the 60s through the 80s. It's a genre of music that's whatever the listener wants it to be. But in this graph, you can see how popular classic rock was on radio stations from 1965 to around the late 80s. So what made this era end? Technology definitely had an impact. The CD made its way in 1982. With this, people can now listen to music without those big vinyls and record players. This was a big step, because after the CDs came, people began to move away from classic rock and into new wave, and more modern music that required more technology. Music critic Carl Wilson goes into detail of how rock is for people who want to stand outside of the norm in his article about rock in 2016. I mean, there wouldn't be a Jimmy Page or an Eric Clapton if rock artists wanted to conform to the status quo. Now, some would argue that bands like Guns N' Roses and Pearl Jam are part of classic rock. These bands reigned in the 90s, and it's almost as if their music was a part of two genres. For example, if grunge was a subgenre a band was known for, and if classic rock was the genre that was the big picture. There was also another type of music that developed in the late 80s, with bands like the Beastie Boys and Rage Against the Machine, who combined characteristics from rap and rock and made their own type of mind-blowing music. This is when classic rock started to die out, and different types of rap became the more popular genre of music. Now, at the end of the day, classic rock never ends. Only the era of classic rock has ended. And anyone can make this type of music whenever they want. So rock on, everybody.